3 weeks later, like, all right, we're going to go arrest Bobby Kahn. And Kahn was gone. Let me tell you a story about Emporio Motors. And you may have heard of them. They were a car dealership up in Ramsey, New Jersey. It was a wholesaler named Bobby Kahn. And anytime I see a dealer come on the scene too quickly, like they go from like small guy, now all of a sudden they've got a huge showroom, spending money, bringing in the giraffes and the circus and the celebrities, and they've got a $20 million fleet of cars parked there. Something's usually wrong, whether it's money laundering or whether they're just doing fraud. Running and building a business is not as simple as you believe off of Instagram. And when you see people go from here to here too quickly, there's usually a reason for that, whether it's PPP fraud, EIDL loans, whatever the government program was. Anytime you have a jump from here to here where everybody else is, oh yeah, that dealership has come a long way in 20 years. But this guy came out of nowhere, and inside 16 months, all of a sudden, he's like the go-to dealership. That's sort of where you saw Bobby Kahn come onto the scene. He was around for a while as a small guy, a small shop. And next thing you know, he's announcing a Zenvo partnership, and he's on the Real Housewives of New Jersey. He's out there partnering up with a famous car tuner, Will Castro. And it's just like, wow, this guy's coming out of nowhere. He's slinging all these big cars. And sure enough, yada, 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 guy ends up arrested by the FBI. So it's not quite as simple, though, because the way he got arrested by the FBI was ultimately being on the lam for a few years and turning himself in. Now, I happen to get caught up in this mess because he was selling one of my cars. Now, I did a bunch of transactions with him, and they all went fine, right? And sometimes he was a little slow to pay, or he's like, oh, here's 20 that, and they've always got an excuse, right? Anyone who owes money that doesn't have it, the excuses are endless. I'm sorry, I have a wire limit of $5,000 a day. No, you don't. You don't have more than $5,000 to give me is the answer. So anytime you start seeing stuff like that, and somebody's having difficulty paying you, especially when they're late in paying you or bouncing checks or anything like that. This was the case with my 458 that Bobby had already sold, and I bought probably 10 cars through him. I've sold cars to him. The transactions were all complete. This was the one that was hanging out there, and he was selling my 458. I owned it in cash. It was $215,000 at the time for a 2010. Now, this is 2015, so they depreciate. So now you think of the 458 value and be like, wow, I wish I could have bought that. We all do. I was selling the car for $215. He was giving me $205, and he was keeping $10,000, which is perfectly fair for a dealer markup for a guy who's selling a car. He was trickling in money, and I'm like, all right, he gave me 50 grand here, and I think he got up to about $150,000 over 2 months maybe. And I'm like, dude, I've got the title. I'm not giving you the title. Like, as far as I know, car's sitting at the dealership. I don't know that he's resold it. He says he's got a buyer on it. The guy's coming in with a bank loan. Long story short, I don't get all of the money. And I'm like, well, if you don't pay me by this date, you got to give me the car back, and we'll sell it. Like, I don't want to. You've already given me 150,000. You're 60 short right now. I don't want to get in a pissing match here. But what you can do is you can resell the car, or I'll resell the car. You get 3 wholesale bids. I don't care what it is. You take the loss. So, like, I'm still getting my 205, and if it sells for 215, great. You're great. If it sells for 180, that 25,000 out of your pocket. So all I need is my 205 and we're good. I'll give you the title, we're done. So we arranged to sell it to a wholesaler in California. I forget what the number was, but figured $200,000. So the delta wasn't really great. The guy sent it over. We sent the title over to the guy in California because I'm like, I don't want to give this guy the title or anything like that. I'll send it directly to you. He paid the dealership, sent the transporter over. When the transporter got there, the car was gone. Now, the transporter did drag its feet, and it took about a week to get there. But at this time, the dealership was imploding, and we were able to catch up with it this way. So we found out who ended up purchasing the car because the car wasn't there. We got the guy's number. I called the guy with the car. The guy from California called the guy who had the car. We're like, dude, you got to bring the car back. He bought it. Like, you brought it back. He's like, well, Bobby told me that he sold it for $225, and then he didn't pay me. And so long story short, this guy was trading paper clips up to a house. And that's how we ended up with the 458, driving it around on the metal dealer plate for a while. When he heard things were going south, it's like hungry, hungry hippo. Everybody goes to take whatever they can, whether they're entitled to it or not. This guy ends up taking the 458 back, telling me he wants his money because he was told 225. Told the other guy, like, look, he told me he sold it for 225. I want the 225, and then you can have the car. And lawyers start getting involved. Bobby Kahn, who's the dealership, nowhere to be found. And a lot of times fraudulent people, and this is just why I know this is just something I've learned over time. When people are big fraud, they always tend to have medical issues towards the end because you're always going to feel bad for the guy with the terminal brain cancer. And Bobby Kahn was one of those guys. Oh, Bobby's not here. He just got carted out in an ambulance. He's got terminal brain cancer, whatever the story would be. You see that a lot with big fraudsters. So people are like, oh, whatever, the guy's going to be dead in 6 months. So what's the use in chasing him? I don't know what the slow roll is with with law enforcement surrounding this matter, but they let him just walk to the airport, get on an airplane, and fly to Dubai. So he went to a non-extradition country. He was out 3 weeks later, like, all right, we're going to go arrest Bobby Kahn. And Kahn was gone. And a couple of years later, everyone's like, I wonder where he is. This couple of year gap after he got arrested and then leading up to him popping back up on the radar was interesting because everybody ended up suing each other and because everybody's fighting over the scraps. I ended up going to court and everybody wants to sue Bobby Kahn, but he's not there. So there's no money there. So everyone's suing for their right to the asset or cut the baby in half. Nobody wants to take, now that everybody's so deep in the legal fees, nobody wants to take $100,000 loss, $200,000 loss. We ended up suing. The reason that the guy, now obviously the guy who bought the car in California, he was due his money back, right? There was no doubt. He didn't get a car. We sent him the title. It all got tangled up, but he was due his money back. The guy who bought the car was able to get TD Bank to forgive the loan on the car, which is because they said they had the title, but they didn't. And also, he was able to effectively get the car for free because he changed his story when he lawyered up that he didn't bring it in for sale. He now brought it in for service. And that distinction allowed him to be a buyer in good faith through New Jersey laws. So he was entitled to the car, and we had to produce the title. And not only that, we had to give the $150,000 that Bobby Kahn gave us back. So now the car that I owned that was worth $205,000, because that's what I agreed to sell it for, that I owned in cash, I had to give up. Every penny that I got towards the car, the $150,000, I had to give back. And then I had to spend $125,000 in legal fees. So I'm out $215 plus $125. I'm out $340,000 in this instance, not counting my time or any other frustration that was involved in that process. I'm out $340,000 trying to sell a Ferrari. So the reason I lost the car was because since this guy brought it back for service, the laws in New Jersey and car laws in general are designed to protect the buyer from the dealership. I have essentially a civil contract with the dealership, so I, as the owner of the car, gets burned. But there's a protection for the buyer from the dealer that ultimately leaves me out in left field without a car and without $340,000. The problem is there are no laws in place to protect consigners from the dealer. So if a dealer ends up swindling you, you're just out the money and you're out your car. So now fast forward, Bobby Kahn pleads guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. He gets a sentence that is less than I've ever seen for wire fraud, which is a 2-year sentence in jail. The sentencing's been delayed for so long that he was on a modified house arrest. So if you follow his Instagram, you'd see he's out and about all the time. He asked me to help get him back in the country, ghosted me ever since, and now he's out and about with his sentence for 2 years. I don't think he's ever going to serve a day in jail because, to my knowledge, I think they're giving him credit for time served for being at home and going to the gym and doing that. So, does crime pay? I don't know. Is there a deterrent there? I don't know. I feel like doing it the hard way, the way I'm doing it, is probably the wrong move.
Buying a used car can be scary, difficult, and risky, especially if it's a long way away from you. And the perfect partner in that shopping process is the Lemon Squad. We want to thank them for their support of VinWiki this month, but I have to thank them for going out and checking out an Aventador that I found recently. It was actually a Lemon Law buyback, and it was yellow, just the perfect scenario to test out the Lemon Squad. And it's amazing how inexpensive it is for them to go almost immediately, like the next day, to check out the car in person if you can't get there. And of course, they uncovered tons of things, which made me even more excited about all the other things I was going to use to negotiate. And as I was doing so, somebody saw it online, did no inspection, and paid full boat retail, at least 100 grand more than the car was worth. So be sure to use the Lemon Squad to check out the next car that you're looking for, and hopefully they'll save you just as much money if the idiots don't find it first.